And we're here.
live.
Hello, all welcome. It is Monday night, generational change. We cannot do this.
Yes, we can.
No. Ironically, look what I'm wearing.
Oh, Coffee
Anyway,
yourself.
it's
Oh,
Monday
go Coffee yourself.
Generational change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and I am wearing the Festivus.
Guys, and by the way, and for people who have been following our show, this would be our, I don't know what annual, but we are no longer having Festivus. Festivus has been canceled because Jerry Seinfeld has completely poisoned everything about Seinfeld to me. So it just ruins it.
Jen, why do you have a problem with genocide? It's just us Jews protecting ourselves.
And so everything about that is just very ruined for me. And it's sad. Are you just wearing that because you had an ugly sweater party and that was sort of like the closest thing you had to put on to sort of look like ugly sweaterish?
Okay, so Donald James, thank you for being here for a year. You've been a tremendous supporter of the show. We're not gonna get fully into Luigi Mangione.
I have so many things to say.
Yeah. I've said time and again, and Jen has said it many times as well. The left will always find a way to fuck a good opportunity up. Always. There is never an opportunity that they will not find.
It's interesting that that's the angle and I do agree. Like, I agree with that, but that's the sort of angle you're taking. Like, whereas as for me, this is, and I have been saying this a long time. There are many, many, many clips on this show where I have said that it is going to get more and more violent, that we are an incredibly violent society. We perpetrate violence all around the world. We have more firearms than people. And I'm not speaking about gun control. I'm just doing like statistics. So when you have a lot of very angry people, it's just a matter of time before this stuff happens. And I want to be very clear. I mean, I'm not a pacifist in this regard. And to be honest, to me, denial of healthcare, just like denial of my lady rights, that's violence towards me. So I do not actually mind the idea of violence in the other direction, so long as it is aimed in the correct direction, as this was. And I don't feel bad about it. I do think I like it, actually. I do.
Well, it's the only thing that's actually going to scare people.
Very friggin' uncomfortable. I don't care. People need to get very friggin' uncomfortable. Fuck those people. Seriously, fuck those people. Thank you, Chris. So that is, I mean, like, so to me, I'm sad. On the one hand, I don't see how this goes to trial. I just don't, which concerns me for his safety and security. That's my concern. Because this cannot go to a trial. They will not find 12 people in New York that'll be willing to convict this guy. It's not going to happen. You won't be able to find an impartial jury, an unbiased jury. You won't be able to find, you could not impanel 12 people in this fucking country that would fault somebody for hating a CEO of a healthcare company. So I don't know what jury they could change venue to anywhere in this country and they will not find 12 people to convict him. So I don't understand.
No, they will not find 12 people to convict him. And I don't think that that's the point. I think the point is I do get the sense that Luigi Mangione probably.
Also, he's adorable, I want to say. He's
fantastic.
Adorable, and they are turning him into a friggin' legend.
Well, here's the thing. He's a very in shape, handsome guy. He's also Ivy League educated, and he has a lot of very populist takes in politics that do not fall under one particular umbrella.
And he is not a psychopath.
No,
he is not. This is somebody that really does feel that violence, and I agree. Let me tell you something. I have no problem with people responding violently. The only reason I won't, and I wouldn't do that, is I have too much to lose right now to do that. But if I didn't, if something happened to my kids because of this and I had nothing to lose, oh yeah. That's why I don't fault anybody for the only thing, like, I can't take that risk, but there are way too many people with nothing left to lose.
And let me just say, because, you know, Donald James is a paying member and we appreciate everyone who contributes, but especially those that contribute in the way that he does. You know, we'll see how much time we have before our guest arrives, but I will say this. For those that are trying to point out that this particular person, Mr. Mangione, liked, for example, some of the commentary of Jordan Peterson. Who fucking cares? It's just, this gets to the point where
only leftists,
only leftists do this
like
shit.
libs, only. What even. This is why they can't get along with anybody on any issue, because they're so fucking elitist that they don't get it's a class war.
I know it is a class war. And even if they do get it, and listen, and I have said a lot of nice things about you, Crystal Ball. You were very guilty of this earlier today. We're basically saying, oh, did you know that this guy listens to, who cares? Why does that matter? That shouldn't mean anything. The only thing that matters is that his manifesto says that we need single-payer healthcare in the United States, and somebody had to step up to the plate and do something about the fact that the very people that are preventing it is one of the people that he assassinated. It's that simple. So this guy listens to other stuff. It almost makes me wonder: are you trying to distract from the message that's going on right now?
Yes,
because that's what it sounds like.
That's a tool. Now you're a tool of capital. If the focus of this
sometimes millennium
is exactly right.
That's what happens. Mm-hmm. And do not forget that under certain circumstances, this is inevitably what will happen in our society. As our friend, and just so you know, guys, we'll throw this out there already. We are going live at a special time on Thursday. We will be live at 7 p.m., not 9 p.m. And why is that, Jen? What are we doing on Thursday, Jen?
I love when he talks to me like I'm a little kid, where you have to say, what do you have to say? Just say what you have to say. So, guys, Jordan asked us to host Status Coup for him on Thursday. So we're going to do that it's 5, right? They go live at 5. So then it just made sense for us to then go straight into our show at 7. So that's what we're doing. And we will be speaking with my friend Matthew Ho.
We'll have a lot to cover, Matthew. Jen, could you inform the audience a little bit about what Matthew's been up to and what we're going to be talking about?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, first of all, Matthew is someone who's been on for anything basically involving, I feel like, foreign policy is just, he's full of information. But he just came from a delegation to Palestine, Solidarity. I don't know I don't know the organization or how he went, but he has a lot to say about that. And some stuff that he saw that is just absolutely horrifying. And I'm not even talking about the overtly horrifying, what we all see on our phones every day about the genocide. I mean, things that he saw in the Israel side of the Israel side of the fence. So yeah, it's just stuff that's just really telling.
I like how Henry really likes to exaggerate exactly what he's going to do.
Oh my God.
I know you'll be there.
So dramatic. So dramatic. You know what, guys, though, for people especially that are supporters of our, first of all, if this is your first time here, hi, welcome. Please subscribe. Please hit the like button. But anybody who's our regular people, a lot of you do cross over with Status Coup just because over the years. And it's kind of like you will appreciate that they're picking up some numbers that it could possibly, like, rising tides lift all boats situation.
I would definitely agree. And there is no channel that we want to see. Yeah. There's no channel we want to see do better than Jordan's. And the fact that his numbers have been off the charts over the last several days, very well deserving. I tuned in for a portion of his live stream earlier today. He got up to 3,500 live viewers at one time.
I was so pleased. So here's what's interesting. So he and I were texting a little bit about the shooter thing. Yeah. And like right before he went live, not today when they caught him, but yesterday. And I had basically told him that, while I appreciate, while I appreciate how he always says, no, I'm not condoning this, I'm not condoning violence, I'm past that at this point. Violence is being perpetrated against us. Violence is being, and it's like, we're so beaten into submission. And I don't think people really understand that what is happening to people in this country is extremely violent. When you have people that have no housing and police are literally bulldozing their every encampment and everything instead of helping them figure out housing, like that's violent. Anything where you're taking away our rights, that's violence. So I guess I see it differently. And I am to some extent pleased that people are punching and aiming their anger in the correct direction. Because when we see just crazy ass psycho shootings, that's not, or schools, that's not helping. That's not, this is very righteous and very justified. And the fact that nobody gave a shit. Nobody gave a shit. Only a handful of elitist frigging like sycophant talking heads gave a shit. Like, seriously, we are so far past decorum here. Exactly. This is why, like, I think this is why I love Dr. West so much, because one of the things he always says is he's like, I'm not a pacifist. And I'm not either. Not when it comes to violence against my person. And right now, I feel like violence is being perpetrated against me. In this state specifically, I don't have my lady rights. That's disgusting. That's violence against me.
I really think we're in a very watershed moment right now. And I know a lot of times people think that they're living in a unique period, but we truly are living in a unique period. I think that that's fair to say.
I think it's a convergence of so many different things at the same time.
Yes, that's partially.
But don't you think it's also that because we're so interconnected that we know things that are going on? Like, there have been huge things in history, but like people didn't know it at the time.
Fair.
I mean, you know what I mean? How do we know?
You're right. How do we know? And one of the things that we're going to learn tonight, and I think one of the things that we've tried to do with our channel constantly, is inform people as much as possible about a lot of the things that are going on, because a lot of times people can do, and Willie is absolutely right about that. Private health insurance companies do practice violence. So
that's their business model.
One of the more unique things about Bernie Sanders when he ran for president the first time was how he would tell people about what it was like living in Burlington, Vermont, and I was right by the border of Canada. And so when you're right by the border, you can bring people in to Canada and get their prescription drugs in a universal health system at 10% of the cost that they pay here in the United States. Well, our guest happens to live right on the border of Mexico, and Mexico, ding, 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 has universal health care as well. Of course, we don't. And I can imagine that when you're in El Paso, and if you are able to get across the border, I would imagine that some of those small Mexican towns, you probably are able to get treatment in a way that you simply cannot get here in the United States. That is among many of the issues that do exist. When we're constantly browbeating other nations like Mexico, I think we've come to the point where now we're questioning everything. We are questioning, why do we browbeat other nations? Because in truth, I think it's because those other nations have things that they can offer that we don't have here that we would really like to have. And so that is why this evening we are pleased to welcome the professor of government at El Paso Community College, Dr. Sergio Sanz Rivera. Welcome to Generational Change, hopefully for the first time and not the last time. How are you, sir?
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. Hi,
Nice
I lived in Texas for 6 years. Actually, I went to law school at St. Mary's in San Antonio, and my older son was actually born there. So I would have still been there. So I definitely have like love for Texas and a lot of things Texas. And I have worked in federal court there and know a lot about like some of the border issues that are. So I have a lot of empathy, and I have not been to El Paso, but I do have a friend from law school that is an attorney in El Paso. But thank you so much for coming. And I don't think people realize what it's like in a place like El Paso. People think of Texas. You're thinking at best Houston, Metroplex, maybe Austin, San Antonio. Like, people don't really understand what West Texas is like.
Yes, El Paso is 9 hours away from San Antonio, actually, driving, and 14 to Houston. We're closer to Santa Fe, to Tucson, than we are, and we're closer to Juarez. Actually, the El Paso is part of the borderplex. It's Paso del Norte region, which includes Juarez, which is 1.5 million. El Paso is 800, and Las Cruces, New Mexico is another 150. So we're talking about 2 million people living near. Like, it's the same city from above. In satellite, you don't distinguish them, except there's a river, there's a wall. Like, it's just, yes.
How is that teaching government? You know, I hear your accent. Are you local to that? Is that your region?
I was born in Juarez, raised in Juarez, but I mostly grew in Mexico City.
Oh, okay.
And I lived in Philadelphia for quite a while, and then other nations and other countries too. So maybe my accent is like a melange of everything else. Philly,
but you're familiar with that region, right?
Yeah.
Like, you, for all I know, you would have told me, "Look, I'm from Ecuador," and I would have no idea, right? Like that's the thing. So no,
I'm a complete borderlander, Mexico City.
Okay. So you know about puffy tacos.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, I mean, that's a really important factor. Peter has no idea about puffy tacos, but anyway.
I can't say that I do. What I am familiar with, of course, is the Juarez cartel. And one of the things that has always been a huge topic of, I think, controversy here in the United States has been the war on drugs and why it even exists and how that begets things like the Juarez cartel. What type of knowledge can you share, obviously being on the border in El Paso? Because I do think that, I mean, I'm for drug decriminalization across the board. We could debate how many narcotics should actually be legal. But at the end of the day, the fact that we have what we have, and I think has caused so much in terms of crime, in terms of the border issue, in terms of immigration, I do think that the war on drugs plays a substantial role in all of that. Your thoughts as far as that is concerned?
I believe that the enormity of what the border is gets lost in the war against drugs and immigration. You know, this is a region and two countries that are completely interdependent on one another. They're intertwined beyond the drugs and the immigration. The value of immigration and drugs does not compare to the legal 95% value in GDP that is other industry, manufacture, agriculture. But the press takes like 90% of the attention on the border is the part that sells. Now, there's the truth there that the drugs are enormous business, right? And I agree with you, Peter, that I would legalize all drugs because I'm like that. But the reality is that the war on drugs represents big business for both sides. If it's like cancer going away, like there wouldn't be any hospitals, non-profits. So that business would go away, right? So if we did away with drugs, we wouldn't have pretext for politicians to sell cameras, walls, patrols, hire border agents. We wouldn't have all those collateral industries that produce, immigration and drug wars. Big discursive narrative business, big money involved. So you cannot do away with that big business of fighting the drug. They make as much money selling the drugs and fighting it on both sides.
Yes.
And where's the money?
Same people playing both sides of that and have been. Well, I'm from Miami. I grew up in Miami. So I am very familiar with the interconnectedness of the drug industry and law enforcement and the corrections institute. It is
big business.
It's big business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So nobody wants to do away with immigration. Nobody wants to really do away with drugs because it would leave a lot of unemployed people, a lot of border patrol agents without a job, and all these, all these narratives about what should be the most harmonious relation between two neighbors, excepting perhaps Canada, because we have so much in common. Both countries are beautiful. There's a lot of interconnectedness of families and culture along the border. The Southwest is like northern Mexico. Northern Mexico is like the Southwest, but you don't want to see it, especially if you live away from the border. You don't see the blurring lines. You see like a deep in the map. You see clearly the division between Mexico and the United States, but it's not like that on the ground.
No,
Not from the perspective here.
No, not at all. And in fact, I met people when I was living there whose families had lived in the area. So south of Bexar County or Helotes or wherever, somewhere in that vicinity, since before Texas was part of the United States. So basically we came and drew an arbitrary line. And then the best would be when people when white people would be like irritated about people speaking Spanish in parts of Texas when they've lived there speaking that for generations,
hundreds of years.
And that's one of those things where I'm like the caucasity.
Sure.
But yeah, it is very entwined. It's subcultures. Like it's so interconnected there. The intermixed. It's not quite Mexican. It's not Texan. It's just like it's its whole own thing. But my whole thought on the immigration thing is that we should just be treating everybody a whole lot nicer at the border and welcoming them and offering them housing and maybe some hot meals and an education or some stuff. And so that's just me. And that's sort of my issue. It's not so much about the citizenship thing. Like everybody could argue about that. I just don't like that. To me, it's unacceptable how we treat people. And going back to what we were talking about before, how we treat people at the border is violent. That's violence. Women swimming over like razor wire, and getting sliced, and that's violent. So I'm just saying. So it's the same concept. It's like we're just violent everywhere.
The thing is that the United States should have more special ways into separate people into different categories and make it more flexible for the people that need to be here, that can be here, and rejecting all those that maybe they are a threat, maybe like 1% are criminals and crazies like Trump says, but to make those generalizations and have just one way of getting into the United States, which every empire in the past has restricted entry to and integration into its citizen body, and I understand the United States, but the reality is this is an interconnected world. This is a global world. You cannot bring Chinese engineers from China and expect them to their families to stay in China. I mean, people don't travel alone, don't live alone. People want connections too. So the economy is intertwined with immigration. If you want the United States economy to grow, you have to pay the price in that you're going to need people to populate, especially in an aging population that's going to stop paying taxes and that they're going to start demanding. There's nobody to pay for the Medicare, Medicaid, and all those services.
Yeah, interestingly, in the same society where I would be treating those people kindly and paying them a living wage, we would live in a world where the people that are running the businesses that are skimming all the money from the labor, those people would be in prison. See, the problem isn't that that immigrants are coming here and anything like that. The problem is that the management is skimming the money, treating them like crap, and telling everybody that's working class here that it's the fault of the immigrants.
Yeah.
So that's what we're watching happen, and and it's just so clear to me. So how do you teach about our government with a straight face? Like when this is so, it's so. I just feel bad for the people that are used as pawns, because that's essentially it. Those people at the border are just pawns.
Well, you gotta, when you're a professor of government, you gotta first train your students to think for themselves. So I present them the issues and I make them research. And do you think immigrants are a burden to this country or not? And then we present the data, and actually we realize, and I've done this exercise, that immigrants bring economic growth to the communities that they're at. But they're perceived as a nuisance, and especially in the cultural part, right? So it's very easy to scapegoat the immigrant or the minority or the people that looks different than the mainstream population. But so yeah, in regards to how I teach, what it feels to teach this, that's what I do is make it up for yourselves, and I present the data. And I think that 90% of my students arrive to a reasonable conclusion that immigrants are not to blame.
No.
Professor, one of the bigger issues economically, and I've always maintained, and I'm more conservative on immigration than Jen is, but I also maintain that the big issue with immigration and why it's become such a watershed issue is because labor is starting to find its footing in the United States for the first time in a long time. And of course, when you are a government that is wholly owned by corporate special interests, and if you guys are not familiar with Texas politics, become aware of how bad things are up in Austin. It's not pretty. They are kind of a prime example of how bad things can get at the state level in terms of that corporate takeover. And so I'm looking at it from the perspective of we don't have a living wage. We do not have universal health care. And so labor is the primary driving force to changing that narrative. And so when corporate power eventually recognizes that, oh, we're in trouble here, what they'll do is they'll open the floodgates up at the border and basically just allow more people to come in that will work for pennies on the dollar because they're coming from desperate situations. And all the while, workers in this country get screwed and the rich continue to get richer. Just the idea of seeing Elon Musk have his net worth go up $7.5 billion in like the past week. It's just, these numbers don't make sense anymore. It's so broken. And if I may add a little sports analogy here, the idea that Juan Soto was worth $765 million to play baseball. Listen, he's worth a lot of money, but these numbers become so egregious when the average person can't rub 2 cents together. From where I stand, I'm wondering what it's like on Mexico's side, because everybody portrays Mexico to being this piss poor country that's completely corrupt. Well, I'm willing to bet that it's probably not. In fact, you probably have a lot of things together on the Mexico side that we could only wish that we would have here on the American side. Am I right about that?
Well, it's easy to idealize my own country of origin, but it's certainly Mexico. If you look at the data, it's an upper middle class country. It's like the 13th economy in the world. It's not like the peace poor country of the 1950s.
No.
And it's a whole lot of urban, lower middle class with low salaries, but really getting educated, especially after NAFTA. You can see a lot of universities open, a lot of people with college degrees now, underemployed, underpaid. And those are the people that are being expelled and attracted to better salaries and better positions here in the United States. So there is the Mexican agricultural worker component still, but it's not the majority of people. Actually, the people that come here from the Mexico, even though it may have universal health care, which is really bad, really. And I can tell you horror stories from my own family.
Right.
But President Andrés Manuel really tried to reform the public services, which were not serving as they were. But it's not enough to keep an engineer and a doctor or a person with technical skills in Mexico to work for a lower salary when they can come to the United States, especially if you have connections here. If you marry, you come for a professional internship and then you stay, you meet someone, you marry, and those are real stories, and Mexico is an amazing place to live when you have a job and a salary. It's very difficult to make it if you don't have a standard technical profession like engineer, doctor, etc., it's really hard to make it. But people live very well. Like there was a survey like 7 years ago before the pandemic. Would you leave Mexico? And 95% of the people say, I don't want to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And truth is, many Americans are migrating into living in Mexico because of the quality of life. It's a great country. It's freer. It's not a police state. So It's, and perhaps that's a problem because then you have the cartels overrunning the show, right? But for the common citizen, like drinking on the street and partying and having parties all open, it's a very comfortable life, honestly. And especially if you go to a local village and you start getting to know the people, it's very generous, tremendous, welcoming country.
Yeah.
You know, those
I
are
would
the
move
good
there.
parts.
I would move to that.
But
There's
not
always-
to idealize.
No, but I
It's
know that
hard.
there's a lot of art communities in the mountains in Mexico, and I think that I know that there's some very cool places there for sure. Yeah.
I do want to ask you, Professor, because I think this is an important kind of, I would say it's one of the more significant issues in our nation that has made America infinitely worse economically, and that, of course, is NAFTA. I think that was a start. Obviously, there's been a lot, but I have maintained that the worst president of my lifetime is definitely George W. Bush, but Bill Clinton is not that far behind. Like, he's pretty close. When you consider everything that Bush did in terms of foreign policy in particular, there is just no coming back from that. And a lot of that was obviously driven by Dick Cheney. But you look at the domestic policies that were enacted under Bill Clinton. NAFTA was enacted by a supermajority Democratic Congress, and Bill Clinton signed that into law. And what that has done to labor in this country, this would have been Ronald Reagan's wet dream. He could never have envisioned that he would have been able to have done something like this as president. And of course, he couldn't, because the Tip O'Neill Democratic Congress at that time wouldn't allow it. But Congress comes in under Clinton, completely changes the game, and we've been suffering for it ever since. What was it like on the Mexico side? Were there any real economic benefits to NAFTA for Mexico?
Very good question, and there's arguments for both sides, and I studied this in a little depth, and the arguments are inconclusive because Mexico did win on the manufacturing sector for sure, but it never got the technology transfer that, for instance, China gets. So China gets all these high-tech companies, and they get to profit from the technology that is imported. Mexico is kind of very bad at negotiating its stance on technology transfer. You know, agriculture in Mexico was wiped out. Literally subsidized agriculture from the United States, subsidized corn especially, killed Mexican agriculture. There were 4.9 million families displaced. And now those empty lots were bought by agribusiness in America. And now they can plant 3 times as much corn in Mexico because of the weather. You know that in Mexico you can plant corn all year round and have 4 crops or 3 crops, whereas in Iowa only 1, right? So it's like all these bonanza that went to the United States. But on manufacturing, for instance, and financial sector, Mexico became very attractive. And I guess this is a merit of the Mexican government to have made it easier to invest and in the stock market, in the financial market, with trade with its foreign debt. Mexico actually is a very attractive coin of investment, even during the recessions. Overall, Mexican middle class and education grew. So did the actual migration of the middle class to the United States, because the expectation when you created NAFTA with actually George H. Bush created NAFTA. Mm-hmm. And the expectation was Mexico is going to manufacture, we're going to produce cheap, because we don't have to pay the Mexican worker peanuts, right? And our TVs are going to be the cheapest, best made in the world. We're going to say assembled in Mexico, made in the United States, and we're going to sell it all over the world. But the reality is that employment in Mexico created expectations for families that now those peanut paid workers send their kids to college, and now those kids are engineers, are doctors, are technicians, mechanical engineers, robotics, and Mexico produces a lot of engineers, and they are come to the United States with separate and different expectations than their forefathers, you know? So in one generation, NAFTA changed the expectations of the middle classes in Mexico. So I don't know, Pete, if we really gain anything in NAFTA. It's a mixed bag, you know, like one thing is that American products got cheaper. Yeah, they got cheaper. Everybody hates free trade when it's free trade, but when it's not, then you're going to see your TVs getting more expensive, right? And you're going to hate the non-free trade either, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't happy with the opening of border. The reality in Mexico also got all the American pollution, right? All these companies that didn't want to comply with the Environmental Protection Agency just move a mile away, and from El Paso to Juarez, you know, is a mile away, literally the same polluting plant with arsenic, lead, and all these is a mile away from the border. They're like avoiding these environmental protections, so they dump the environment in Mexico. They became a dumpster for pollutants. What else? Yeah, I guess I need you know, the drug dealers and the traffic dealers started to use these newly created chains. So once you let Mexican tomatoes arrive en masse, you're gonna hire an inspector and an X-ray machine, and then you have a huge bridge and a huge border agents and number of border agents, and that allows for drug dealers to squeeze in all the in between the tomatoes and the merchandise. You know, you fivefold, tenfold multiply the amount of trade that comes. It's impossible to monitor every box that comes into the U.S. Let's call it space to space. So it's just a mixed bag.
I would definitely agree. And of course, it came at our own exploitation, but, you know, we do it to everybody else. You know, that's the thing. I have no problem with free trade if we're trading with countries that actually value their workers. And that is something that, as we know,
we don't value our workers.
No, not at all.
So why would any country want to trade with us? Like, if I were any country, I wouldn't sign a deal with us. We've never honored any agreement that we've ever signed. What if we're signing an agreement, you can bet that the people on the other side are being raped and exploited. That's all there is to it. Like, otherwise we wouldn't sign that agreement. And then we'll still violate it anyway. So I don't understand why anybody would sign an agreement with us.
Well, that's also, in retrospect, it's a lot to do with why these problems persist the way that they do, because our system of government is no longer, it never really was, but it really has just morphed into kind of like a dying empire, because we've become so disconnected with regular people that we're, I guess, for a while, just not even acknowledging that there's any representation. It's been proven time and again, and I'm sure you've taught this as a professor of government. The only people who are truly represented in this country are the people who control everything through money and power. Once you get past that, it doesn't matter. There's a reason why the abundance of billionaires is just out of sight, out of mind at this point. It'd be one thing if you had this incredible idea that just ended up in everybody's backyard, kind of like Steve Jobs with the Apple II. You know, every once in a while, something comes along that's extraordinary and everybody wants it. But today, we've learned so much about just the whole concept of, you know, hedge funds and just the maneuvering of money, which creates nothing. It does nothing. There is no value. It's an empty nest, and we're recognizing that reality today. And so I ask you, Professor, as we conclude, it does seem that your president seems to be a lot more in touch with regular people in a way that many of our presidents, including the one who's about to come back into the White House, doesn't really, despite what his supporters think. And I love a lot of his people, I do. But I think when you get to this level of desperation,
They're very good people. There's
Yeah.
some very good people.
but you end up supporting a demigod. We've seen this time and again throughout history. It's not uncommon. So I would ask you, in conclusion, how do you see your country going forward? And do you feel that President Steinbaum has the interests of the Mexican people at heart in a way that clearly our leaders in our country do not?
I do believe she was trained in a public university like I was in the National University, very leftist leaning. And I do believe on that she's convinced that something's gotta be done for the people. But the reality binds her. She's a president is not a person with a magic wand. He's surrounded by its systems and circumstances, and one of the circumstances in Mexico is that Mexico is, like the United States, an oligarchy. So Mexico is controlled by a bunch of families that control 90% of the money, and she's trapped. And whatever she wants to do, even though she controls the Senate and the House and the courts now, all of that change is gonna have to be mediated through these power holders, as you mentioned, Elon Musk and all these corporate personas. It's like the corporation of not we the people, but we the corporation of the United States, in order to.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same in Mexico, right? We the people of Mexico, mediated by the corporation. So I think Claudia Sheinbaum is really well-intentioned, but it's gonna be her power to actually affect change is gonna be hard. I mean, it's not just that because a lot of people in Mexico are also very conservative economically. They saw the gains in NAFTA. They don't want to change the system a lot. So even though they're desperate, but whenever they see change, they protest, which is a kind of schizophrenic.
So I'm getting
like,
that. So here's what I'm getting. I'm getting basically that Mexico is now also an oligarchy, and is essentially that the people that are comfortable and privileged, they're not willing to shake the boat because their lives are pretty good. And so why would they mess with that?
Exactly. Mexico has always been an oligarchy. Always.
Okay. Right.
Never
So it
been
just
other
seems
moments.
nicer. Maybe it just seems to me like a nicer version. I also would like to say that in a million years, as a little girl growing up, it never occurred to me that we would see the first female Jewish president and she would be in Mexico. Like, that never occurred to me in a million years. So
Yeah.
I think that's just like, it's a little bit, yes, I know there's Jewish Mexicans. Yes, I know that to be true, but it's just not, it's definitely not what your typical thought would be.
No, most of Mexico is definitely Catholic, but that's
Yes.
Not anymore, actually. There's 70%. Actually, the U.S. turned out to be more religious than Mexico nowadays.
Oh, that's not
Last
surprising.
20 years, yeah.
That's not
And
that's
they're
not surprising.
evangelicals, because we have those crazy, because we have those people. Mexico, it's just like normal.
Yeah, no, if you're basing it, I mean, listen, Catholics go to church, but Catholics as a whole are not fanatical the way that they are particularly in the Bible Belt, particularly in East Texas. It is a completely different world.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like you're going to burn in hell. Like, it's like that type of religious fanaticism. And that's why when you look across the state at somebody like Joel Osteen, I see the very worst of what religion stands for. The very best of what religion stands for right now in this moment, ironically, is Pope Francis. He really has, he is preaching the true message of Christ in a way that very few ever end up doing, because let's be honest, we've learned in this country that religion is a huge, huge business. A lot of money to be made.
The opposite of Mexico, that what I'm seeing in Mexico is sort of a nihilism, like they don't believe in anything, in government, in religion. So it's kind of another radicalism there emerging, brewing especially in the younger generations that I see. They are not ideology driven, not for socialism, not for liberal. They just live in the here and now, which is a dangerous thing. There's a little loss of warmth and passion when you don't believe in anything. You need to be convinced. Even so, I have Christian evangelical students. They are magnificent, amazing, great thinkers, but the world is colored. So maybe my world is colored too. Everybody has biases, Too bad when is one lopsided that the democracy does not represent all the views, but that's when it gets dangerous, like one overpowers everything else.
Professor, thank you for what you do. It goes without saying, and I've said this, and Jen has said this, teachers and nurses are the two most underappreciated professions in our country. And yet we seem to do everything in our power to make it even more difficult for you to do your job. So
by design. Well, we want people to be stupid. We want people to be stupid, uneducated. Yeah. We do.
Well, it is our job. It is our job to make sure that is not the case. We revere this necessary work that needs to be done. Hopefully the students that you have are learning a thing or two. And in the meantime, thank you for the knowledge. I've always wanted to ask somebody who really understood the machinations of NAFTA and our current situation with Trump coming back into the White House, what it actually meant economically on the other side of the border, because we know what it meant here. And so safe to say that was really appreciated that insight this evening.
Thank you so much.
It was nice to meet you.
Me. Very nice. The pleasure is mine, really. Thank you very much.
Happy holidays, Professor. Thank you so much.
Take care. Take care.
The fact that you're wearing your Festivus shirt is unusual given that we're not anywhere near Festivus yet.
What are you talking about? It's only a couple of weeks.
Weeks? It's not like it's even.
No, actually, excuse me. It's actually 2 weeks away.
Okay, 2 weeks. Festivus is the 23rd.
You make it seem like I put up my Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving. Like I didn't do that.
I'm just bitter about that you're still wearing the Festivus shirt.
Listen, I went to an ugly sweater networking thing.
I know you did it. That's the closest thing you have to an ugly sweater. That's what I said to you.
Yeah, but it works. It's such a good shirt.
Oh, so unfortunate.
So we will have our.
Okay, he was lovely.
Yes, and of course
he was lovely, and I. It does remind me. I love that. I love his accent. I love that. So good.
So we obviously have to address the fact that we did a segment the other day regarding President Bashar al-Assad and the fact that the Syrian regime has now been taken down by the Syrian rebels.
You mean Al-Qaeda?
Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, tomato. They had a rebranding exercise. Continue.
The only thing you need to know about whether Assad being taken out of power is bullshit, this is why it's bullshit.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its suppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions.
Disagreement, Jen. It's just a disagreement.
It's just a disagreement. But, he's just so disgusting to me because, first of all, I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. Like I've always said, how do you know that Israel's lying? Because its lips are moving. Its lips are moving. But he's just such a fucking coward and such a fucking liar. And it's just disgusting to me that he gets airtime. And the fact that, like, for whatever reason, and I'm not this is not whether or not I think Assad was good or not good or whatever. What I do know is that is for the Syrian people to figure out and decide. And my understanding is there are a lot of people in Syria that are very happy that a 5 decade long family monarchy regime is not there anymore, but also recognize that there is definitely scary implications as to what comes next. And this douchebag has to make it about that somehow it has to do with him.
Hey,
And
a
it
lot
has
of
to do
people,
with what's good for Israel.
look,
And
there were a lot of people that were happy when Saddam was taken out. Everything is
I know it's
circumstantial.
not for us to determine because
Correct.
I know that I don't live in Syria and I'm not Syrian, so that's not my position. I don't know what to do about that. But this piece of shit right here, sitting there and making it about. And here's the thing: is the only way. Like, he has nothing without U.S. support, and in this case, Turkey. Turkey is what's fueling what's going on in Syria. The fact that he takes credit for anything is just so unbelievable.
Well, he's little man syndrome, and we'll leave it at that. We'll finish this.
We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Equally, we send a hand of peace to all those beyond our border in Syria, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border of Israel.
Let me be very clear, though, what he's talking about, because he's insane. Okay. The border to which he is referring to is way deeper in Syria than is, according to the rest of the world. So his border, what he's trying to do is create what's called Greater Israel in his psychotic mind. And that includes a portion of Syria, a portion of Lebanon, a portion of Jordan, a little nip of Saudi Arabia. Like, it's this whole little nip tuck thing he's got going on there.
The fact that
someone please deal with him.
Yeah.
And no, I don't think that would solve the entire problem. I know it wouldn't solve the entire problem, but damn, would that be satisfying?
Well, Bibi keeps walking this very fine line, and I think we're all walking this fine line. But as we have pointed out time and again, what we are witnessing is the collapse of empire, because while this may be considered a victory of sorts for the West, for Israel, US, people, I don't think, fully understand how much Israel's economy is collapsing right now, the difficulties that they are having. Think about if we're ever in a position, remember, we normally give Israel about, I want to say, is it like $4 billion a year? Now, obviously, it's been accelerated to such a number that people can't even see, because we're not reporting how much we're giving Israel. We're reporting how much we're giving Ukraine. But
here's my question. I don't know the difference between how much money we're giving Israel versus how much weapons and military we're giving Israel and how much money we're giving to Lockheed and Raytheon, because the difference is that right now, because of what's going on in Israel, they have lost tons of population. They have towns that are basically shut down. They have people that are staying in hotels and are really pissed, which is who he's trying to, make look, he's trying to look all tough and get his people back. Good luck to them with that. But their economy is really taking a dive. They're having issues with all sorts of trade partners. Their shipping route has been completely eradicated in the Red Sea. The Houthis have been basically stalling. All their international trade is a mess. They've lost trade with several different people who won't trade with countries based on what's going on with the ICC and the ICJ.
And you now have, the IDF marching to Damascus. It's like, how much expansion do they think they're going to be able to get away with? And anyone who had any doubts about what the intentions were of taking Assad out of power, Netanyahu left no doubt whatsoever what this was all about. So anyone who had this idea that this was a liberation of the Syrian people, God, how many, it's like our friend our libertarian friend in Miami, Clint Russell, pointed out on social media, very accurate. He was very accurate about this. He's like, how many fucking times do we have to repeat this before somebody fucking gets it? How many times do we have to go through Iraq, through Afghanistan, through Libya before you guys fucking wake up and this is the same thing repeating itself over and over again?
But now you're just being an Assad apologist.
I am an Assad apologist. What are you going to do about it? We do not want to keep our esteemed guest waiting because
she's esteemed.
Yes, she is. There is a very important local story. Yes, local politics in South Florida.
But yet very relevant to
this moment.
Yeah.
Colin, did I don't, you know what? I don't remember if I actually sent Colin the article, but we got to pull this up because I know I sent it to you, Jen. So Colin, I'm going to text this to you right now because I thought I had sent it over pertaining to what's going on in Broward County. This was a message from Phil Lewis earlier. I don't know if I'm checking the screen right now to see if you had sent it.
It's all the most craziest shit.
But not surprising. Not surprising considering how Wasserman Schultz runs South Florida. So this shouldn't surprise anybody.
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
She's knee deep with Sheriff Tony. So without further ado, you know her from Probation Station. She is an amazing friend and an amazing ally and activist and fighter of the highest order. Mona Lisa Weber, welcome back to Generational Change. You're muted.
Unmute.
There you go.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, Mo. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I am good. So I just very briefly had a chance to look at whatever that was that Peter, whatever you forwarded me that we're going to put up here. But am I hallucinating that? Okay, that's what I thought it said. And this people, it like Peter, I don't even know what to say. Like that is the most Florida thing I can ever think of right there. That sounds so perfect.
So we have a sheriff who has formed, as we all know, and we've pointed out time and again, a very unholy alliance with our congresswoman. He has been under investigation for criminal activity for a very long time. The Broward Sheriff's Office has been knee-deep in corrupt issues that has been going on for several years, as I pointed out. But apparently, for the last 3 years, Mo, Broward County Sheriff's Office produced its own crack cocaine so it could sell it to people that deputies would then arrest for buying crack cocaine. Yeah, it's pretty much as Florida gets.
It's Florida is like in Florida. Like, so they're making money on the front end and they're making money on the back end.
So this is the stuff like in the late 80s and early 90s, right? Where the Broward Sheriff's Office actually made crack cocaine. This is according to the article that I read. And I mean, it's not surprising. And I'm just really proud of our state attorney, Harold F. Pryor Jr., who's really like digging in deep and, working on exonerees and working on like shaking things up. There's over 2,600 people that their convictions are going to be hopefully reversed, and they'll be able to seal and expunge their records.
So this is people from that 3-year period of time.
Yeah, from back then. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like the last.
So it really has nothing to do with the current sheriff, mind you.
No.
But right, it has nothing to do with the current sheriff.
No, not the current sheriff. This is back in the day, and the Broward Sheriff's Office was cooking their own crack cocaine. Help me, Father.
You're younger than me, so like this wasn't anything like at that time that you knew about at that time.
No, and I wasn't even in South Florida at that time, right?
Okay.
But definitely it's not surprising because remember the 80s was when like crack hit, right? Like crack cocaine hit.
I was
in
here.
The 80s. And my whole thing is I just want people to understand that people who enter the criminal justice system, a lot of it it revolves around poverty, not necessarily, you know, them actually being criminals. Most people believe that Black and brown people are just simply criminals because of what's portrayed in the media and, you know, the constant negative images that the media is always just putting out. You know what I mean? So I just want people to understand that the majority of our communities, the crimes that are committed are based on poverty, based on lack of resources, and simply, you know, many people are just put in a corner. And if the majority of society, white folks included, were put in a corner, they would be committing crimes too. So how do we advocate? How do we become part of the process to change this stuff, right? I am so happy that Harold Pryor is our state attorney.
So wait, I want to ask this because so he's probably, I mean, if this is coming up now, so this article is just from, you know, recent, but this is from a long time ago. I would guess that he started working on this right when he got in there, or
Yeah,
soon thereafter.
He's been working.
That's what I mean. So on these, probably not just these, but he must have started this process on these exonerations or whatever it is he's doing. Because he was, just for people who don't know, he was first elected in 2020. So
and he is and I want to say this over and over again because it's not highlighted enough. It's not highlighted. Harold Pryor is the first Black man state attorney in the state of Florida. I'm going to say it again. The first Black man state attorney in the state of Florida. I didn't
realize that. Wow.
Yeah. Nobody. It's like, you know, because Black men are being emasculated. Black men. Yeah, Black men are being emasculated. Black men are being ignored. They're being pushed to the freaking side, right? So, like, he is the first Black man state attorney in the state of Florida. And he's shaking shit up, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to me because, like, he's so not what people would say are a DEI hire. You know what I mean? Like, he's just there because he's completely capable and just good at his job. And he was, you know, that's who I voted for. So, you know, that he's there because he's good at what he does. And so that's why I guess I never realized that he was the first Black DA in the state. That's great.
Yeah, and Gordon Weeks is the first Black man public defender in the state of Florida. Yes, Broward County is doing. Yeah, Broward County is Broward County. Yep.
Well, you know what? We have to come back. We have to compensate for the fact that however many years ago our sheriff was cooking the crack. Okay, so we now have to be like compensating for crack cooking.
It's mind blowing to me, but you know. Our previous state attorney, Michael Satz, who was there for over 40 years, ridiculously, obviously these were the tactics that was used because he was the state attorney at that time in the late 80s and the 90s. And, you know, he sent generations of Black men to prison, generations, fathers, grandfathers, grandkids, you know what I mean? And now we come to find out, you know, the Broward Sheriff's Office was cooking crack. Like, you know what? I cannot.
And yet not surprised. So I'm having this whole new appreciation. So when I was in high school, my boyfriend at the time, my like first serious boyfriend, his father was a public defender in Broward County. We lived in Dade, but he was a public defender in Broward County. And this was all during that time period. And I just have a whole new appreciation now for, he was always like, to me, like just a really upstanding, good guy, like really fighting, never wanted to do anything but defend people, like was a lifetimer. And there's not many people that are lifers at places like the public defender's office. And now I'm thinking about that in a whole new way. Like he was literally there while the sheriff's office was cooking crack.
But you know, this is, and I just want all this stuff just to come out. I want people to advocate for themselves. You already know what I'm about. And it's time for community to stand up, all communities, right? Black, white, brown, Muslim, right? And come in and be a part of the criminal justice system and advocate for justice and for what's right? And for truth, right? For truth. That's what I want. That's what I'm educating people on. That is the mission. That is the goal, to advocate, to show up for the less fortunate, to be able to provide resources, right? I was having a conversation with a friend recently about criminal justice reform, right? How the whole country is talking about criminal justice reform. Oh my God, yeah, but how are we going to do criminal justice reform, but we're not focusing on reentry? What is the point of criminal justice reform where there's no reentry programs and there's no resources and there's no family support?
Okay, but you know what? Here's what I think. You're saying there's no reentry. The bigger problem, Mo, is there's no entry, right, in the first place. So this is why it's a huger issue. You're right.
I love how you said that. There is no entry. Yeah, you're right.
That's what I'm talking about. So like, if there's no, why would we expect help for people when we didn't help them in the first place? That's the point. I think the goal is to get ahead of that. The goal is to be on, it's like, I know you're fighting on both ends. Like, I know that you address it.
Well, here's the thing. So I had, earlier this year, I interviewed our state attorney, Harold Pryor, right? We're friends. And one of the things that stood out, and I stand with him on this as much as I advocate, but he says, you know, when we were talking about the youth, and he said, when the youth come into the criminal justice system, like, that's it. Like, that's where it ends. Like, and then he puts it back on the community, right? Like, where's the community? Where are people? Why aren't people going to the PTA meetings? Why aren't they going to the local commission meetings? Why aren't they going to their local county meetings, right? Because, you know, I'm not too much into politics, although I was, you know, doing your campaign and all this
Dragged
stuff.
into it.
But here's the thing, like, as I began to learn politics, particularly local, going to city and county commission meetings and actually leading local issues, I realized, right, that there's just a lot of money in the county. And we as community people are not demanding anything to be done for community to bring resources into the most impoverished areas. So once the youth and people go into the criminal justice system, it's pretty much too late. Now we can advocate, but as Harold says, where is the community?
Where?
Right? We are so reactionary. We are so, all we do is complain about the issues, right? That's all we do. And I'm not about the complaints anymore. Like,
people have been beaten into submission to some extent. Like, people don't expect anything. I feel like people, and then, you know, when you say, well, why aren't they at PTO meetings, which is a very big problem. But I would suggest that if people had healthcare and a living wage and they weren't struggling to survive, like, you know, when somebody's working however many jobs, that's why so many of these kids, you know, it is a lot of people that just, how can they
okay,
just,
so, right. So people, okay. So see, that's going to be the next,
that's
remember, my goal moving forward is to be peaceful and deliver messages that resonate with the audience and with community, because, you know, I can be extremely harsh. We cannot continue to have this same conversation of impoverished, having 2 or 3 jobs. What are the solutions to that, right? People like ourselves that are out here in the community, how do we help those who have 2 or 3 jobs, right? How do we navigate? What type of teams can we put together to help those in less fortunate communities?
You're talking mutual aid. You're talking local mutual aid. This is the whole, that's like the whole Black Panthers. That's the whole point of it. So the rainbow.
We're going to have, I'm going to sit here a year from now. I'm going to sit here 10 years from now on your platform. We're going to have the same conversation, because
no, but we'll be living somewhere else. We'll be on the same land, but maybe in some different campers. And we'll, you know, I'll wave to you outside the window.
No. This is a calling for me. So I'll be doing this till I'm 85, 90 years old. I'm gonna be in the courtroom like, Your Honor. I'm gonna be in the courtroom like, Your Honor, listen. And I'm gonna be like this, shaking, listen to me, Your Honor. I'm gonna be doing this. I advocate. I'm in my 40s. I'm gonna be 85 years old. I'm the elder going in the courtroom speaking for the babies. Like, we are not part of any processes. Like, I can't deal with the complaints. Now I know that you know, we have, what is it, nationwide politics. I focus on, as you know, local politics. I don't focus on all that other stuff. Local politics is where it's at, because if Mona Lisa and a few others can go into a courtroom, advocate, and change the outcome of cases, like, I'm not concerned about the stuff that's happening outside of the state or outside of Broward County. I'm concerned about if we could start in our homes first, because our homes are a disaster. Most of us homes are a disaster. The chaos, the domestic violence, like, it's a disaster. Most people's
it's a poverty situation. It's a poverty situation.
Right. But when starting at home, then this doesn't necessarily mean poverty. I know people that do well and their homes are chaotic. So, like, we start at home, then we start on our blocks, then we start in the community, then the cities, then the county. Like, nobody wants to sweep in their own front door. They want to sit on the online and complain about shit that's happening in frigging North Carolina and Texas. No, excuse my language. No, your front door. Who is your state attorney? Who is your state attorney? Who is your public defender? Who is your sheriff? Who is your city commit? Like, that's the type of shit we need to be focused on. I can't deal with, I just can't do it no more. Like, I've been out here for 2 months, same shit, shit, you know?
It's also because things, especially in the realm of criminal justice, it is so much more important locally. And this is why I don't think judges should be elected, that all judges should be appointed like federal judges. But is that regular people, no offense to regular people, should not be voting for judges who are making some of the harshest determinations. Like, I don't think people understand the power that you really have in the criminal justice system at the local level. And that is something that is very scary. And you're talking something that impacts so many people, and most people vote for whoever has the biggest sign.
So that's where we need advocacy, and we need courtroom observation. There's a lot of judges locally and abroad, not all, right? We never speak all, that at times are disrespectful, right? Don't treat people fairly because they sit in a chair with power. So we need to be analyzing these judges. We need to be sitting in courtrooms quietly. We don't have to make any noise. We could be nice and chilling and just write notes down. And then we need to bring this information to the community, because brothers and sisters, you can elect your judges and you can get rid of them. I remember there was a judge, because I was quoted on one of the newspapers. I got contacted about it. There was a judge here in Broward County who sentenced a young brother to 60 plus years in prison for a violation of probation. His history was, you know, he had like criminal history. But he violated his probation and sentenced to 60 years. The community got together and demanded, I think, put out a petition, but they gave the petition went to like a person who had like 1 million followers. So the story hit nationwide, and that judge is no longer on the bench. Like, I want to empower communities to understand that we do have the power to make change collectively. It can't just be me or Peter or you going in the courtroom like, hey, no, collectively, we have the power of social media. We have the power of emails. We have the power of writing letters. We have the power of organizing. It can be done respectfully, intentionally, strategically. We execute and we manifest. It's just that simple. However, most people are too emotional to get out of their own ass and think outside of themselves, right? To make change for the better, for like the bigger, the collective. So we do have the power to make change, local change, small change, impactful change, one change at a time. And it's, for me, it's the emotionalism. Like, I just can't deal with the emotionalism.
So I just had a good idea, Mo. Is there not a local organization that evaluates the judges, the criminal judges in particular?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because that would be a really cool thing to do. Because, you know, have you ever noticed, like, and I know you don't want to get involved in the politics, but you never really see judges often, really, on the cards, right? Like every once in a while, there'll be one in an event, but it's never. And people don't like. More importantly than preventing people is knowing that you can get people you like elected to a judge position. Like you can get an attorney or someone that you really like elected. But yeah, I think somebody should be sitting in on those courtrooms.
That's an idea, because as you know, I'm working on creating my criminal justice online support community, right? And these are the things that I constantly think about because my advocacy in and out of the courtroom, and then all the relationships that I've built locally,
I think you should give them like Yelp reviews. I think you guys should like give judges like criminal justice Yelp reviews.
Oh, listen, and also defense attorneys.
Of course,
because you got a lot of defense attorneys out here that is taking your money, and that's all they doing. They ain't doing nothing. And I'm advocating right now.
Those are not elected. Those are not elected. That's why I'm like, you can do that. You can definitely do that. But I think that you're onto something with somebody should be watching those judges. And then when they're up for election, going into your community and saying, this guy gave 60 something years XYZ, right? Like that's how you do it. Is but
I'm also big on sitting in court. I don't like judges disrespecting people. I'm real big on respect. I don't care who you are, criminal, not criminal. It don't matter. Like you have some of these judges that really be tripping, right? I recently found a video. Someone sent me a video where there was a judge. Listen to this. This was amazing. This was in Georgia. There was a judge who would get fines to defendants and attorneys who would come in late. So this particular lady showed up to court. She got a ticket, right? She was a Black woman. She walked into court. She walked in 10 minutes late. It just so happens that she was a federal prosecutor, right? And when she got to the podium or whatever they call it, the judge was like, oh, you're late, da-da-da, da-da-da. Why are you late? Blah, blah, blah. He didn't even let her speak. Oh, you're getting a $500 fine, right? Gave her a $500 fine. So she's quiet. She kept her composure. She's doing what she's doing. This is a true story. It was crazy. She's doing what she's doing. He gives her a $500 fine. And then she says, Your Honor, in light of me paying this fine, I would like to, for the record, state, who I am, blah, blah, blah. So she pulls out like her briefcase with her gold sealed with federal prosecutor. And the judge starts like turning red. And he's like, oh my goodness, my apologies.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead.
Make it $1,000.
Right. No, he wants to remove the fine. Oh, no. Right. Because now he's looking at like he just gave a federal prosecutor a $500 fine for being 10 minutes late. When she explains to him that the reason she was late was because she got a call on a sex trafficking case. Like she had to submit some information because her boss contacted her. The judge was freaking out. Make a long story short, she was like, no, Your Honor, I will pay the fine as documentation and we will be filing an internal investigation. Come to find out, this judge was giving fines 3 to 4 times to Black people. The fines were $450 and white people $150. By the time they was done with him, he had to resign. He had to take bias training. He had to do this. They implemented all these programs, bias training, this type of program. And this was in Georgia. So this young lady that arrived 10 minutes late to court and chose to stand firm and still pay the fine to prove a point.
Yeah.
All this stuff was changed within the courtroom and the courthouse in Georgia. And that's what I'm talking about. Advocacy, standing firm. And this is the part that pissed me off. The clerk had 12 years of documentation of what the judge was doing. His clerk. The bailiff stayed quiet. Everybody in the courtroom, including the defense attorney, stayed quiet. And that's the problem. We continue to stay quiet and people get abused and sent to can you imagine someone so impoverished to get a $450 fine? They're finna go to jail.
Judges are very, very powerful. And when you work for a judge, like when you work in chambers and you work for a judge, they're God. Like, seriously, you're not going to cross that person. No, like, I am like, that is not going to happen. So you say like they all stay quiet. Oh, I'm sure they did. You're not working for a judge if you're not that. That's why those.
When I was in the courtroom, I'm sorry, but that's just me. When I was in the courtroom working every day for a year, my judge heard from me, my big mouth. I would always say something. I'm sorry. You're going to have to hold me in contempt, whatever. But he always, I'm just a very logical and fair human being. Like, Your Honor, no, what you're doing does not make any sense. What, Mona Lisa? Your Honor, may I? Mona Lisa, what is it now? You see what I'm saying? You develop a rapport and you call them out respectfully. Like, I'm tired of people being scared. It's not that serious. Stand up. You have a purpose here.
Oh, yeah.
You have stuff to do. We're not just living here. We're part of the ecosystem. We're part of community. We are humans. We're supposed to love on one another and protect each other. This should be out of control.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
So
but yeah, Broward County was cooking crack.
Yeah.
The moral of the story.
The moral of the story is Broward County in the late 80s and 90s was cooking crack. Okay.
Not at all surprised.
No, and shouldn't surprise anybody. And that, of course, is part of our political arena that we so crazily decided that we were going to get involved in and try to fix it. I think we've made some inroads for sure. But because
I think you know what, I'm good to take it somewhere else. I'm good to look. There's no shortage of people all around that need help.
Oh no, I mean they've all kind of destroyed themselves in the process.
Yeah, there's people all around in places where I would infinitely rather reside that I can help. They don't need to be here. There's all sorts of people that need help.
Guys, make sure that you are checking out Probation Station. That's Mo's group, and any way that you can get involved. Like she said, all politics is local. Thank you for coming on and talking about this very important issue, because as we know, criminal justice is as significant a problem as we have in the United States. Jen, you've pointed out time and again, it's one of the three pillars of our society that has a for-profit component to it that shouldn't have it, which is, of course, is healthcare, education, and corrections. This is a huge problem that is only surfacing more and more by the day. And we're grateful to have a friend like you and a fighter like you who does what you do, staying on top of this. Hopefully, we'll continue to see progress made with Mr. Pryor, as with you.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And,
yeah, I think that's good.
And obviously, all the best in the meantime. And stick around and watch, I guess, the rest of the way.
Oh,
Yeah,
she doesn't need to. She
yeah,
can go do
y'all
her
to
own
be
thing.
going in. Y'all to be going in. Hello to all the followers. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate y'all. And definitely support generational change. Jen and Peter are pretty dope people. Pretty dope.
Yeah.
People.
Well, I heard a rumor that you were contemplating potentially doing like a regular show for us. All right. I'm just putting that out there because I didn't think of that, but I did hear that somewhere.
Could happen.
There could be a Mo show.
Open
The
invitation. We're going to grow our chat.
Show.
The Mo Show.
The
Yeah.
Mo
Oh, I like the name.
Yeah,
the Mo Show.
Show.
Damn,
For
that's
sure. The Mo
for
Show.
sure.
For sure.
Yeah,
I'm not
man.
allowed to talk like that though, but the Mo Show.
The Mo Show. I really like that. That sounds pretty cool.
All right. So now you have the concept. Now you just got to
There
fill
you
it out.
go.
Oh, have mercy.
Once a week for 1 hour. That's all you got to do.
At
Once
the
a
Mo
week.
Show, and you could come on and rant about whatever you want to rant about for like whatever you want to say.
Ooh. I may be down with that. That'll be cool.
Yeah, like sort of like you're.
Well, the crowd definitely would like you to do that. So
Oh yeah.
that's the start. Yeah.
What she say? She called Jen pretty dope. Yeah, Jen is a good soul, y'all. Jen is a good soul. She's a good
So are
friend.
you, Momo.
She's a good soul.
Thank
Appreciate you,
Mo.
my friend.
All right,
All
we'll
right.
talk.
Yeah, have a good evening. Peace
Bye.
and blessings. All right.
So I made sure that we had a couple of things to cover because, as I said, I think that there's a number of different places that we can go.
I see you have Bill Burr down there, so I don't
do.
know what. I love Bill Burr, so I hope this isn't something that's going to like really bother me. Did he do something involving non-consenting entities?
No, All right. So,
Good.
we've got, this is going to be a multi-layer address regarding what's going on with United Healthcare and why this is such a significant issue, and why, for a lot of you who've been paying attention to what's been going on today, this is clearly a watershed moment, because now you're starting to see the propaganda really propagate all over social media. Was this guy a right winger? Is he from a prominent fit? Who gives a fuck? None of this stuff means anything.
Such a
It's just
distraction.
a distraction, waste of time.
Give
And
us fucking healthcare.
this is what matters.
Basic.
I don't know the name. Frankly, I don't give a fuck what this guy's name is, because I don't even think it's that important. But this is the replacement CEO of UnitedHealth. And here's what he had to say.
He's a little Voldemort-y.
Yeah. Yes. He said this yesterday.
Sure, everybody has been disturbed by the amount of negative and
just the fact that he has the British accent right off the bat proves
and
that
he's talking about our healthcare system.
Yeah, total
Fuck
thing.
him.
For a guy who literally grew up with a universal healthcare system, who came here to make his riches off of our backs.
And he does bald men poorly. Just
in many
saying.
cases vitriolic media and commentary that has been produced over the last few days, particularly in the social media environment. And I want to reassure you of a few things. Firstly, we are going to continue to make sure that we put patients, consumers, and members first, as we always have done.
Okay.
The mission of this company.
In what universe have they ever done that? I mean, the same information where he's saying all these vile statements are also showing that United has the absolute worst percentage in terms of claims denials. So where does he, like, that he can say this with a straight face, this person that is clearly from somewhere that has healthcare? Like,
that's what makes it worse.
No, it makes it, no matter where he's from with that accent, he comes from somewhere that has healthcare. So this is just really infuriating.
Certainly sounds like a Bond villain, that's for sure.
Company is truly to make sure that we help the system improve by helping the experience for individuals get better and better. There was nobody who did more to try and advance that mission than Brian Thompson. And there are very few people in the history of the U.S. healthcare industry who had a
all right, right there. See, that's it. The fact that that's a phrase, the healthcare industry is like case in point why we have this problem. This guy's horrible. He's like a bad combination of like Rick Scott and Patrick Stewart.
He's not done yet.
Healthcare than Brian. And we are going to make sure that we not only acknowledge and honor that legacy of Brian, but we will continue it.
Oh.
Our role is a critical role, and we make sure that care is safe, appropriate, and is delivered when people need it. And we guard against the pressures that exist for unsafe care or for unnecessary care to be delivered in a way.
I hope people know where this motherfucker lives.
Unnecessary care, Jen. Unnecessary care.
I am so irate. This guy is just so disgusting. He's doubling down after what we've just seen across the internet with where people are on this. And he's actually sitting there with a straight face saying, we're going to continue Brian's great legacy of what? Of mass murder?
Which makes the whole system too complex and ultimately unsustainable. So we're going to continue to make that case. We will continue to do the work we do. And I have never been more proud of this company and our colleagues and what this company does on behalf of people in need across the country.
Keep going, man. Just keep going and keep putting your face out there. Because up until now, nobody knew who he was.
That critical noise that we're hearing right now. It does not reflect reality. It is simply a sign of an era in which we live. What we must do is focus on what we know to be true. And what we know to be true is that the health system needs a company like UnitedHealth Group, and it needs people like Brian within it. We're fortunate that within this company, we have so many people driven and inspired in the same way that Brian was, and we will continue in our journey to help everybody who needs it within the health environment.
Who is this guy? Like, what's his name? Because up until now, like, I would have never known who that was. And now, as far as I'm concerned, he's just put a target on himself. Who is that?
Guys, place his name in the chat, please. I totally forgot his
Because
name.
that's the kind of thing where this guy was able to sort of stay under the radar. Nobody probably would have known who that was. Most people had no idea who Brian Thompson was.
Thank you, Colin. So, sir, excuse me, Jen. He is knighted.
Oh,
Sir Andrew Philip Whitty, Chief Executive Officer, now Chief Executive Officer of UnitedHealth Group, was the CEO of GlaxoSmithKline, because of course he was.
Yeah. Thank you for making yourself known and adding yourself to now what will be memes and lists and all sorts of stuff that whereas nobody would have known who you were. So thank you for that. Exactly. If he was knighted, what did he have to do for that?
So Bill Burr has something to say about the way this particular issue has been covered and is being covered.
Me about this kid who killed this CEO is none of these news programs are talking about the incredible lack of empathy from the general public about this because of how these insurance companies treat people when they're at their most vulnerable, after we've all given them our money every fucking month, and now we finally need you, and all you do is deny us. And then these pussies and all of these things are taking the pictures of their CEOs off their websites. You know, I got to be honest with you, okay?
Before I continue, I just have to say, it is such Bill Burr fashion that he says fuck and they miss the bleep. Because that's,
okay, but can I also say before I forget, because I want people to know this, he's right. Like total cowards, they're going to remove all their people from
that's
their
what
website.
they're doing, and now they're getting like these fleets of security.
And so let me direct you in the correct direction. Every publicly traded company has what's called a proxy statement, and you can go find their proxy statement, and you could see every single person on their board of directors and everything about them. So they could take it off their websites all they want. Let me direct you to a proxy statement for any of those organizations.
All right. So Colin, can you put that in the chat, please?
It's a very basic thing to do. And then once you go from there, go down the rabbit hole. But yes. And yes, they're such cowards. He's so proud of their work.
Yeah. Telling me.
Okay. So I'm still like
fucking CEOs are fucking afraid right now. You should be. By and large, you're all a bunch of selfish, greedy fucking pieces of shit. And a lot of you are mass murderers. You just don't pull the trigger. That's why it looks clean. That's why these people look, oh my God, oh, he was just, walking into a hotel. It's like, okay, but what was his job? What did he do? What was the results of it?
Again, violence begets violence. And when you deny people health care and you have people suffering and dying that is a result of you profiting, that's violence. And so if then violence befalls you, oh, well, again, I'm not a pacifist. It's so infuriating to me.
The one thing that we have learned, and it's interesting to see it on the political right, because I do think there is a distinct difference between the populist right and the conservative right. The populist right is actually, the populist right is actually very much on the same side pertaining to the fact that we have a completely broken health system. I don't call it health care because it's not health care. We should really stop calling it that. It's for profit. It's a for-profit health system. That's what it is. And
it's an industry. It's an industry.
But one of the more interesting things that I discovered, that many of you I'm sure have discovered as well, is that the commentary pertaining to the thread on Shapiro's channel, The Daily Wire, when he put out his post and his video regarding how terrible it was that some vigilante went out there and assassinated this poor innocent Brian Thompson. He got lit up so bad by his own people in the chat. He's like, you frame this as a left vigilante thing. They're like calling him, you fucking asshole. It's like you guys are finally
I
getting
love
it.
that. They're
And there was
calling
no,
him little
honestly,
Benny,
Jen,
little Benny
honestly,
boy.
if you think about all of the grifters, and you know who my top guy is
I
in left
know.
politics.
Everyone
Well,
knows who you do not like.
the right adjacent to David Pakman is definitely Ben Shapiro on the right. He is as big a corporate whore as anybody. And of course, he, much like our congresswoman and a lot of others we point out all the time, there is nobody who is more married to the Israel lobby and their cause than Ben Shapiro. So
I love that his own people called him out, though.
Yes.
Because he is one of the people that will be the it's such a class war, and he's such a classist pig. I know he's so disgusting and elitist. And so it's interesting to me that some of his people would take, I mean, I'm glad he's getting a taste of the populist right, because he is not a populist. He's full of shit. He's a fake populist. If he
a total fake populist. And I really get tired of people talking about, and thank you, Colin, guys, check this out. And also, if you haven't seen the list, and Colin, if you can go real quick.
And all companies have proxy. Yes. All publicly traded companies have proxy statements. So if you're looking for their board and their CEO and all their people, you can find it.
Colin, if you could go to our Twitter X feed and pull up the tweet that I put out earlier today about Wasserman Schultz. I want people to see this, because I want them to know exactly how to go find the information pertaining to UnitedHealth and how they go about donating to their political candidates that they support. UnitedHealth is actually significantly more in bed with the Democratic Party than it is with the Republican Party, which, again, as we've said, the two parties are basically indistinguishable at this point. They're basically the same thing.
Willie, the fact that he's a nerd would normally be appealing if he wasn't such a douche. See, nerd is not unappealing.
No.
I married one. I birthed a couple. I have no problem with nerds. Nerds is not a problem.
Nerd.
Corporate whore douchebag is a problem.
Yes, in which he is. He also hates himself. And the fact that he walks around with that fucking yarmulke on his head.
Okay, don't go there, because, that's not the problem. Problem is he's
he's a very
small person.
He is a small person. He thinks he's pious, and he's not. But that's also because but let's be honest, Jen. He is 1,000% overcompensating. 1,000%.
He probably drives a Cybertruck.
Really? You peg him for a Cybertruck driver?
Or Tesla. Yeah, I do.
I could definitely see him as more of a Tesla driver.
Same fucking difference at this point.
Is this it, Colin? Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. So for those of you who don't know, and this should come as no surprise to anybody, Debbie Wasserman Schultz took $5,000 in campaign contributions just this election cycle from UnitedHealth alone, which, again, not a surprise.
She probably knew Brian Thompson. She probably knew him.
Go to those health conferences in D.C. Absolutely. She has voted no.
She meets with their lobbyists.
Mm-hmm. She has voted no. Well, here's the thing, Don. You have to remember, this is just one of many.
And it's one election cycle.
She has voted no on single-payer health care every single term she's been in Congress. Where does your representative stand? Well, if you guys are following us on X, make sure that you go over and click this link, and you can see a list from this previous election cycle as to where all of the money that UnitedHealth doles out to their congressional representatives.
Yep.
Colin, if you're able to click on that link, I think it might actually we might be able to show people exactly what. So if you scroll down, this is going into this previous election year cycle, 22 to 24, that we just went through. And if you keep going, keep scrolling down. It's a little ways down from what I remember.
We're
So here you go. Here's all of the wonderful.
And as you can see, both parties are very, very fairly represented.
Absolutely.
It's really, it's, yeah. So it's the same thing as the pharma horse, like Cory Booker. I mean, he's probably on this list.
Yes.
Or is this only House? This is only House.
But this is the erosion of the system, guys. And as I pointed out, and I'm thinking we may try to do a little video essay regarding what this all is connected to.
Well, I think we could do a math fund with Jen and Pete about, and look at all the money that all the representatives are taking from people like that. Because again, my goal is to have people aim their anger in the correct direction.
Yes, and if there is anything to be learned from this particular experience,
and these people are a problem. Wait. Let's see. Is he? Nope. See, interesting.
So the Senate candidates, of course, Bob Menendez is on this. Let's count them off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Look,
7,
Rand Paul's
8,
on there though.
9, 10, 11. Yeah, Rand Paul is a hypocrite because he doesn't support single payer, and this is a big reason why. So there's 11 Democrats, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Republicans. So definitely tips the scales in the Democratic direction for sure. But again, equal opportunity, corporate whores. This is what they do.
And so people understand, like, well, it doesn't look like a lot of money. There's different like maximums depending on how it's being done and how it's being funneled and how often and whether it's for a primary and a general and whether it's
and don't forget, Jen, this is also very important, is that this is just UnitedHealth. Who knows what Cigna's giving? Who knows what Aetna's giving? Who knows what Blue Cross is giving? But if they're taking from one, odds are they're taking from all of them. And there is no conglomerate on Capitol Hill that spends more money to bribe, because that's what this is, to bribe our federally elected and even state officials to support or stand against, I should say, single payer health care. Nobody spends more money lobbying on Capitol Hill than private insurance and big pharma. Nobody. In fact, they spend triple the amount on lobbying to their next closest competitor, if you want to call it that.
Right.
This is the most transparently obvious, corrupt fix of our system. These people do not need to exist.
No. You need to take that off the screen while we're saying these people do not need to exist. Like you're somehow threatening the lives of a whole bunch of senators. Peter is referencing the insurance industry, not the names.
Private insurance and the for-profit pharma system have no reason to exist. Remember, when you think about the most significant advancements in modern medicine in the 19th and 20th century, when you think about penicillin, when you think about polio, when you think about measles, these things were all given back as a testament to the advancements in science. But eventually, and I do give Reagan a sizable amount of responsibility here because of the fact that he was the pitchman for GE and was constantly talking about how we need to privatize healthcare in the United States. And so here's where we are. We have ended up in this dreadful position where we have to recognize, as hard as it is to accept, but we have reached the point of no return. It was inevitable that we were going to head in this direction, but there is no saving this system. None whatsoever. It's dreadful.
But it is. And you again realize what the problem is, right? Like we keep coming down to this.
Right there. That's a lot of money.
For an election cycle, it really is.
Absolutely. And she is...
for a congressional candidate, an election cycle. It's a lot.
But I did get a text message from Debbie today that I forwarded to Jen. Guys, Debbie wants you to know that she's on Blue Sky.
She's over there. I don't know what's going on up there, but she's over there. So
and she's got over 500 followers.
They've got to be bots. It's like the K-Hive.
Very much. So
why do you have something about Syria? We're not doing Syria, right? We don't. I mean, I can't even begin to get. No,
we already covered Syria. Colin, you could pull that. That was just.
I mean, I'm just curious why it's there.
No, I'm good. We're gonna do two more segments because this was This was a two-part segment that I wanted to do pertaining to United. Now, as we've pointed out, the only Democratic Party adjacent organization that we do think highly of is More Perfect Union. And
Yeah.
and our good friend who has done many a video essays on this did a video essay recently regarding UnitedHealth. Although I should say, if we're being completely honest, this wasn't recent. It was actually over a year ago.
Right. Well, that makes it more interesting that this has been exactly the point. This is not a new phenomenon.
No. It'd be one thing if this video just came out to inform people. No.
Right. But just as a point, right, this is from a year ago. More Perfect Union is great, guys. If you're not subscribed to More Perfect Union, you should definitely check it out.
So I think you'll enjoy this, but this is going to give you an idea of just how absolutely depraved not only UnitedHealth is, but how depraved the for-profit health system really is and why we need to eliminate it once and for all.
A few weeks ago, producer Alec Opperman reached out to me with a surprising fact. Doctors are taking out payday loans. That kind of blew my mind. And he uncovered this new brazen strategy in healthcare. It's responsible not only for those scummy loans, but also denying patients, like you and the people you love, the vital care that they need. United was founded in Minneapolis in 1977 and pioneered a new kind of insurance, treating people within closed networks of providers, health maintenance organizations, or HMOs. HMOs were pitched as a way to curb America's exploding healthcare costs, which did not happen. Alec told me about an old nonprofit HMO, Physicians Health Plan.
They were also alleging a conflict of interest with the chair of the nonprofit Physicians Health Plan, who was Richard Burke.
And who ran the for-profit United Healthcare?
Also Richard Burke. So this man who was running a nonprofit had hired his for-profit company to manage this nonprofit tax-exempt organization.
I tried looking him up online, and there's really not that much. I tried a video search, and I only found this one video that's literally about how it's so hard to find information about this guy online.
He's only mentioned once in United Health Group's own history. He's been thoroughly involved since the beginning, and he's thoroughly involved now. There are very few to no articles about this person.
Burke and United started snapping up all of these federally subsidized insurers, essentially stealing entire taxpayer-funded organizations. And it makes a lot of sense that the bill was so helpful to United Healthcare. It was written by a think tank, Interstudy.
Interstudy was founded by Paul Elwood Jr. He's this guy who's called the father of the HMO. But I also found another important figure at Interstudy. One of the directors was none other than Richard Burke.
A wave of mergers and acquisitions in the insurance industry in the 90s wiped out the patchwork of regional nonprofit insurers that had already existed. Companies like Anthem went on a
I just want to remind you all that I am the person responsible for all the mergers and acquisitions that transpired in the 90s.
Yes, you are.
shopping spree for these nonprofits and added them to their for-profit empire. At the same time, United continued to consolidate and spent billions acquiring other for-profit insurers. Despite their promises, healthcare costs continued to increase. But they were getting more efficient in one crucial way: rationing your healthcare. For years, only a small portion of claims got denied. It just wasn't cost-effective to have a human review every request for care. But today, nearly 1 in 5 claims are denied.
1 in 5.
And that's, wait. That's the average. Again, remember, United was like at 32%. So that might be, that's based on that overall average.
Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, 1 in 6 means you're playing Russian roulette. And this is even worse than that. You're talking about a 5-bullet chamber. So chances are, Jen, that's basically what you're doing. You're taking a revolver, you're spinning it, and 1 out of the 5 chambers holds a bullet that will shoot you dead. That's what they're doing.
Yes. And profiting. Yes.
Hey, sweet, sweet cash drenched in blood. Kind of like Rick Scott. Just putting that out there.
In 2021, that added up to nearly 50 million.
I found an older newspaper article where a real person's job title was simply denial nurse.
Denial nurse.
Denial nurse.
It isn't just nurses poring over claims looking for excuses to deny them. Tech plays a role too. Dr. Alan Mooney, an executive at United, pioneered a system that allowed for bulk claim denials at rapid speed. Which brings us back to the payday loans.
While I was reporting this piece, I reached out to one doctor who was publicly complaining about the payday loans from United. So the doctor emailed me this report, and the number in there that they pointed me to was that 41% of healthcare providers needed to take out external funds to stay afloat. So like loans, stimulus, etc.
This is why doctors and practices end up needing to take out those predatory payday loans. Appealing a denied claim can take months or years, so companies will front providers that money as they hope for insurer payouts. So UnitedHealthcare's constant denials can be very, very profitable for a payday loan lender, which really works out for United because, of course, they own one, Optum. Optum not only speeds up claim processing to United and other insurers, they offer something called Optum Pay Advance. When capital loans aren't enough for small practices, there are plenty of companies in the market to buy struggling healthcare providers outright, like Blackstone and CVS. But most importantly, United Healthcare. Now the largest employer of physicians in America, 70,000 of them. United's strategy is called vertical integration. It's part of an ongoing process that gets United Healthcare a cut of every single step of the healthcare process. In CEO Andrew Whitty's vision, every part of this process, the pharmacy, the doctor, the loan provider, the insurance, are all run by the same company, his.
There are very few companies in America that have a relationship with 100 million Americans, and none that have a relationship as intimate as healthcare.
The fact that he is called sir is like, that needs to be
well, I'm not calling him sir.
No,
Who's calling him sir?
Yeah, sir, you're making a scene.
Already, United Healthcare members might be told they're required to purchase specific drugs from a hand-selected pharmacy.
Welcome to Optum RX.
Optum. Sound familiar?
Working every day to take care of your pharmacy needs and make sure that you get the most out of your new benefit.
So
they bought it at every level. It's a fucking scam. It's a grift. The whole thing is a grift. So he bought there every level, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So he looks like he's the son of probably a hedge fund manager in Manhattan. Went to like Country Day School or something like that. And now
went to Exeter and Yale and did the whole
guy. He looked like he looks as frail as Ben Shapiro does. So yes, it just totally makes sense. But this is the broken system. This is what we talk about. And this was a video that was made. That's why it was a two-parter that was updated from previous interviews that was done with a guy who has already dealt with United over time. But it really goes to show you just how depraved this company really is, but just the whole system itself. I mean, it's easy to point the finger at Brian Thompson. It's easy to point the finger at United. The whole thing is just a completely broken, untenable system that needs to go away. Like, that's it.
And I think that, sometimes you need to do things and take matters into your own hands.
Yeah.
And when things like that happen and somebody loses their money and their livelihood or their loved one, and then they go after somebody, then, I've been saying for a long time that I'm amazed that this doesn't happen more often.
Listen,
that there aren't more actions like this that have. I'm amazed that it doesn't happen all the time.
I freely admit that I do not have health insurance. Now, I do everything in my power to live as healthy a life as I possibly can, but nothing's guaranteed. But the whole system is a scam. The only instance where I would actually need health care is an instance where
you're sick.
Yeah. Or if I had like a debilitating injury or something to that effect. And even then, what would be the point of having health insurance? I would have to spend so much money to justify it. It just doesn't make sense. It's broken beyond repair.
Yeah.
That's what's happened. And now you're seeing everything come full circle. How is it going to collapse? I don't think they're going to be able to walk through this. I just don't. I think we're at the point now. It's like Trump is going to be inaugurated in just over a month. And it's like, who cares? The problems are so deep at this point. You have to get the sense that the system is ready to fall. Like that's how I'm feeling.
Look, I'm just waiting for the revolution. Like I am doing everything I can to help facilitate the revolution. I am like this shit is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's like the Hunger Games. It really is. Or Don't Look Up. It's just a farce. We're in a farce.
It is.
And there's talking heads sitting there and discussing the level of decorum surrounding the discussion of somebody that killed somebody who makes $10 million a year murdering people.
Now,
and we're discussing that like that there is some sort of any discussion to be had other than give us health care. It's so not complicated. Like, it's just not complicated.
Well, I remember when I did work in corporate America for a little while, and we would have to switch the healthcare plan every year. Every year you would have a different company. It's like musical chairs hopping around.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to do that Hawk thing or whatever. I don't want to talk about that. That is one of the least interesting things to me, is that entire genre.
Okay. I mean, I would like to talk about it, but if you want me to save it,
then do it. Save it for a nice that's a great pontificating moment for you.
Yeah. So we'll address Coffeezilla exposing the Hawk Tuah girl. But remember, guys, and this is the only thing I'll say about the Hawk Tuah girl, because we've never talked about it here on the show.
Because I don't even understand it.
The idea that some random girl at a concert who made a sexual innuendo joke became this quasi-celebrity that all of a sudden had a crypto meme coin done on her behalf, and you found out that it's a scam. Like, honestly, I don't really sympathize with people who are stupid enough to put money into something like that, but it also goes to show you just how broken the system really is. That's what we've come to at this point.
Yeah, I don't understand any of that.
Guys, I will address Coffeezilla exposing Hawk Tuah as well as this meme coin scam.
I can't allocate any mental resources to that.
I will do that.
I just don't have it. Yeah.
Colin, please save the 2 clips for this upcoming Sunday. I will do pontificating with Pete this upcoming Sunday. We've had one hell of a show. This has been a really good evening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm game for a lot of stuff, but no.
Yeah. So for Thursday, remember,
I'm excited because Thursday. Well, it'll be long. We're going to basically be doing a marathon.
Yeah, it'll be like 3 hours. It'll be tough. I've been standing the whole time. I'm definitely going to have to sit for a period.
You need to, and we've had commentary about this. So we're going to need to get an actual camera that's on a tripod or something that isn't your laptop. And so it isn't like you're looking down into your laptop. So we need to get a better situation.
So what I have, well, let me try this while I'm here.
Well, no. You do it another.
Is this, I mean, I need to get well, it's more
That's
about the
better. That's better.
Okay. Which I can do that. Better. I'm happy. I'm fine with doing that.
Especially if you like to stand anyway. It's better. You know what? Now that we finally have 2 cameras set up here, you could have like your little standing thing here too.
So if I were to, hang on. If I were to do this.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, I'm improvising.
Uh-huh.
Just, coming up with,
Well, you're going to need to come up with a decent regular setup. That's too. That's a little too high. A little lower.
You want it lower?
A little lower. No. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. You should see the top 2 lines of your shirt. Yeah. That's good.
How about that?
No, I'm annoyed about that. I'm not. I reject it entirely. I reject Festivus.
But what about the rest of us?
Yeah, it's good. Did you I've started trying to post our patrons, and we want to make sure everybody knows. If you're new here, welcome. You can definitely help us. You could subscribe to this channel. You could join on YouTube too, but you can also do our Patreon. You didn't do the whole spiel for as little as $5 a month.
You could become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. We loved seeing the return of Double K this evening. We also appreciate the wonderful support of Teresa. And
I want to get to where we do them at the end. Because
yes.
when you generally just sit there when you're in the middle of conversation and post them, and then it just distracts me, and I don't like comments while we're chatting.
And of course, Donald James did become a 1-year official member. And again, Double K, thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Great to
Double
have you.
K.
And of course, Teresa, the super sticker for 5 and for
You
10.
guys are awesome.
Yep. It all helps. Again, we don't do this for a living. We do this because we have a passion for these issues. And
We don't do this for a living because one could not live off of this.
no, that's true. But at the same time, we do look at people that do this for a living. And one of the things that we really like about our channel is that we're not corporate captured. We are not doing this because, we're trying to impress this group or we're trying to impress that group. You can see by our chat, our small but mighty chat, it is very across the board in terms of the political spectrum. We do not appeal to just one particular faction of politics, which unfortunately is something a lot of people end up doing because it's all about getting paid. Getting paid is nice, but getting the message out.
I wouldn't know.
No, we're all nuts here to some degree. I'll give you that one. Well, we'll agree to disagree, Adam. But thank you for your concern. We do have passion for
I don't know. Yeah, he's like our new Declan.
Maybe he is Declan. You never know.
Nah.
Not enough wit. You never know.
Not Declan.
Let me explain something to you, dude. Festivus is, I guess it is pagan. Yeah, I guess it is.
Okay, first of all, people, it's all pagan. Anything revolving around December 25th and a big old pine tree is pagan. Deal with it.
Enjoy the festivities a little, can't you? Isn't that what it's about?
I'm a Grinch. I have no interest. To me, it's a commodities exchange. I have no interest. I'm a solstice. I am a supporter and a celebrator of the solstice.
We will be.
Which is, for anyone interested, solstice is December 21st. And that's my holiday. And it is most definitely pagan.
We will be hosting very proudly in what could end up being our biggest audience yet since we've been doing our show. We will be hosting Status Coup on Thursday. Jordan is going to be in Washington, D.C. We are lending a hand. And
so if you're not a Status Coup person, you should now be a Status Coup person.
Mm-hmm. Arthur Handy agrees with you, Jen.
Thank you.
And then, of course, make sure you tune in to Generational Change. Mark your time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We're going to go straight from Status Coup, basically, into our show.
We will have another great friend of the show, Matthew Ho, and he will be talking.
He's in Ireland right now, so I'm figuring he's coming back at some point, or maybe he already is back. But he's been posting really nice pictures of Ireland.
A place I would love to go one of these days, and I will. So smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. We love you. We appreciate you all.
See you Thursday. Status Coup, 5 o'clock Eastern Time.
Have a good night, guys.